She moved like a ghost. 1 second his drink was there, the next it wasn't, replaced by an identical glass in a stranger's steady grip. The black waitress didn't look back, didn't explain, just disappeared behind the kitchen doors while Kang Min sat paralyzed, watching a rival across the room smile at his untouched drink, realizing he'd been seconds away from his own funeral. Welcome to Wonderpath Stories, besties. Please like, share, and subscribe. Kang Min-ho had been a dead man walking for exactly 7 seconds before she saved him. 7 seconds between the moment Kim Tae-jun raised his glass across the crowded restaurant in a mocking toast, and the moment Min-ho would have swallowed the poison meant to end Korea's most dangerous mafia war without a single shot fired. 7 seconds that changed everything because a curvy black woman with tired eyes and quick hands had seen something she wasn't supposed to see and made a choice that would bind them together in ways neither could have predicted. The restaurant was Moonlight Garden, one of Seoul's most exclusive establishments, where the city's elite pretended they didn't know exactly who sat in the private rooms conducting business over wagyu and soju. Min-ho owned a quarter of the building. Kim Tae-jun owned the restaurant 2 blocks over. They'd been circling each other like sharks for 6 months, ever since Tae-jun's crew had tried to muscle in on Min-ho's territory in Gangnam. Tonight was supposed to be a peace negotiation, neutral ground, witnesses from 3 other families to ensure nobody did anything stupid. Except someone had done something very stupid, and Min-ho would have paid for it with his life if not for her. He sat perfectly still, watching Tae-jun's smile fade as the man realized his drink hadn't been touched. Watched confusion flicker across that smug face when Min-ho's glass sat full and untouched while an identical glass rested in front of an empty seat 3 tables away, condensation already forming on the crystal. Min-ho's mind raced, calculating angles and probabilities. Someone on his team was a traitor. Someone close enough to know his schedule, his seating arrangements, his drink preferences. Someone who'd arranged for poison to be delivered in his scotch at exactly the right moment. But they hadn't counted on the waitress with observant eyes who'd switched the glasses so smoothly that even Min-ho hadn't noticed until it was done. He stood abruptly, his Lieutenant Young-woo immediately at his side, hand sliding inside his jacket where a gun rested against his ribs. Min-ho's eyes never left Tae-jun's face as he spoke, voice low and deadly calm. "We're leaving." Young-woo didn't question, didn't hesitate, just moved with him toward the exit, flanked by 4 more of his men who materialized from their posts around the restaurant like shadows gaining substance. Behind them, chaos erupted as Tae-jun's people realized the game had shifted, realized their boss's careful plan had somehow failed. Chairs scraped. Voices rose. Hands reached for weapons. But Min-ho was already through the kitchen doors, following the path the waitress had taken, his survival instinct screaming that she was the key to understanding what had just happened. The kitchen was industrial chrome and controlled chaos, chefs shouting orders, flames leaping from woks, the air thick with garlic and ginger and the sharp scent of fear as Min-ho's presence registered. Everyone froze. Knives stilled mid-chop. Conversations died. In the corner near the service entrance, the waitress stood with her back to him, untying her apron with shaking hands. She knew he was there. Her shoulders tensed, her movements going careful and deliberate like a rabbit trying not to attract a predator's attention. Min-ho moved through the kitchen slowly, deliberately, giving his men time to secure the exits to ensure nobody else followed. When he stopped 3 feet behind her, she finally turned, and for the first time he saw her face clearly. Beautiful didn't begin to cover it. She was a goddess carved from ebony and starlight, with high cheekbones, full lips, and eyes that held more intelligence and weariness than any woman her age should possess. She was maybe 24, 25 at most, with natural hair pulled back in a professional bun, and a curvy figure that her standard issue uniform did nothing to hide. But it was her eyes that held him frozen, dark brown and fathomless and absolutely terrified. Yet she stood her ground, chin lifted, meeting his gaze with a defiance that stirred something in his chest he hadn't felt in years. Respect. "You switched my glass," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. She swallowed hard, her throat working but didn't deny it. "Yes." "Why?" "Because the man who delivered it to your table," she paused, choosing words carefully, "he wasn't your usual server. And he watched you too closely, waited to see you drink it. Min-ho's eyes narrowed. How long have you worked here? 4 months. And you know my usual server. I know everyone's usual everything. It's my job to notice. Her voice was steady despite the fear in her eyes. And tonight, something was wrong. So you switched it. Took the risk that I might notice. Might think you were the threat. She met his gaze directly. I took the risk that you'd rather be alive to ask questions than dead because nobody paid attention. Smart woman. Min-ho's Lieutenant Youngwoo moved closer, his hand still inside his jacket. Boss, we need to move. T-Jun's people are circling in a minute. Min-ho's attention never wavered from the waitress. What's your name? There was a long pause where he watched her consider lying, watched her weigh the consequences of giving him that piece of herself. Finally, voice barely above a whisper. Amara. Amara Baptiste. Amara. He tested the name, let it roll off his tongue, felt it settle into his bones like it belonged there. You saved my life tonight, Amara Baptiste. That creates a debt. I don't want anything from you, she said quickly. Just let me leave. Let me walk out of here and forget this happened. Min-ho almost smiled. It was a good answer, the smart answer, the answer of someone who understood exactly how dangerous his world was and wanted no part of it. But fate didn't care about smart answers or safe choices. Fate had put her in his path tonight, had made her the reason he was still breathing, and in his world, debts like that didn't go unpaid. You think it's that simple? That you can walk away after this? I'm not asking for simple, she replied, some of her fear giving way to frustration. I'm asking for possible. Min-ho studied her, nodding the exhaustion in her eyes, the way her uniform hung slightly loose like she'd lost weight recently, the calluses on her hands that spoke of hard work and long hours. This woman wasn't part of his world, wasn't one of the glamorous socialites who threw themselves at him for money and power and the thrill of danger. She was real, hardworking, probably struggling to make ends meet in a city that didn't care about people like her. And she'd risked everything to save his life without knowing who he was or what he could offer her in return. That kind of selfless courage was rare, precious, dangerous to both of them. Boss Youngwoo's voice held an edge of urgency now. We need to go. Now. T-Jun knows something went wrong. His people are asking questions. Min-ho made a decision that would change both their lives. You're coming with me. What? No. Amara stepped back, her eyes widening. I told you I don't want anything. You don't have a choice. His voice was gentle but absolute. T-Jun's people saw you near my table. They saw you in the kitchen. By tomorrow morning, they'll know you switched the glasses and they'll come for you. To silence you, to send me a message, to punish the person who ruined their carefully laid plan. Her face went pale. You're lying, trying to scare me so I never lie, Amara, and I never leave debts unpaid. His eyes held hers. You saved my life. Now I'm going to save yours, whether you want me to or not. She opened her mouth to argue, to protest, to demand her freedom. But sirens cut through the night, distant but growing closer. Police responding to reports of a disturbance at Moonlight Garden. In minutes, this kitchen would be flooded with cops asking questions neither of them could afford to answer. Amara looked at the service entrance, at freedom just 30 feet away, at a life where she could pretend tonight never happened. Then she looked at Kang Min-ho, at the most dangerous man in Seoul standing in front of her with death in his eyes and something else, something protective and possessive and absolutely certain. And she made a choice that terrified her even more than staying. She reached for her purse, her coat, her keys. Let's go. The ride to Min-ho's penthouse was silent except for the hum of the engine and the occasional crackle of Youngwoo's radio as his people reported in. Amara sat pressed against the far door of the luxury sedan, putting as much distance between herself and Min-ho as the backseat allowed. He didn't push, didn't crowd her, just sat perfectly still with his attention divided between his phone and the street, already working angles, making calls, restructuring his operation to account for the fact that someone in his inner circle had betrayed him. Someone close, someone trusted, someone who would pay for their treachery in ways that would make other potential traitors think twice. The penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of one of Seoul's most exclusive buildings, the kind of place where residents were shielded from curious eyes by private elevators and security systems that could probably defend against a small army. Amara followed Min-ho inside, Youngwoo and 2 other guards flanking them, and tried not to let her jaw drop at the sheer opulence. floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city. Minimalist furniture that probably cost more than she made in a year. Art on the walls that looked like it belonged in museums. This was a different world, a different universe from her cramped studio apartment in Itaewon, where she could hear her neighbors arguing through paper-thin walls. "You'll stay here," Min-ho said, his voice pulling her attention back. His eyes held hers. "Until we determine the full extent of the threat. A few days at most. I have a job," Amara protested weakly. "An apartment. A life." Youngwoo made a call, his voice low and efficient. Within hours, arrangements were made. Her landlord was paid 6 months in advance. Her job at Moonlight Garden received notice that she'd accepted a better position elsewhere, with a generous severance package to ensure no questions. Her few belongings were collected by trusted people and delivered to the penthouse by dawn. Amara watched her life being reorganized with terrifying efficiency and realized she'd made a terrible mistake trusting this man. Not because he was cruel or violent, but because he was thorough. Complete. Once Kang Min-ho decided something belonged to him, he didn't let go. That first night, she barely slept, lying in a guest room that was bigger than her entire apartment, listening to the city hum far below, wondering what she'd gotten herself into. Around 3 in the morning, she heard footsteps in the hallway. Soft, measured, packing. She cracked the door and saw Min-ho standing at the windows in the main living area, still fully dressed, a glass of whiskey in his hand, staring out at Seoul like he was cataloging every light, every shadow, every potential threat. Even in profile, he was beautiful in the way dangerous things are beautiful. Sharp jaw, aristocratic nose, hair that fell across his forehead in a way that made her fingers itch to brush it back. And eyes, God, those eyes that had seen too much and calculated everything and held secrets that would probably destroy her if she got too close. She started to retreat to give him privacy, but his voice stopped her. "Can't sleep." She froze, then stepped fully into the room. "No." He turned, his gaze traveling over her in the oversized t-shirt and sleep pants his housekeeper had provided, and something flickered in his eyes, something hot and hungry that he quickly shuddered. "You're safe here, Amara. I promise you that. I don't know you," she said quietly. "I don't know if your promises mean anything." "Fair enough." He set down his glass. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. Who you are, what you do, why someone tried to kill you tonight, and why you really brought me here when you could have just given me money and told me to disappear." Min-ho was silent for a long moment, weighing how much truth to give her, how much of his darkness to expose to this woman who'd already seen too much. Finally, he spoke. "My name is Kang Min-ho. I run the largest organized crime syndicate in Seoul. We control territory in Gangnam, Itaewon, and Hongdae. Gambling, protection, construction contracts, nightlife. Everything that makes this city run after dark has my fingerprints on it. Kim Tae-jun, the man at the restaurant, wants what I have. He's been trying to take it for months. Tonight was his most direct attempt." A pause. "As for why I brought you here instead of paying you off," he moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the dim light, "because the moment you saved my life, you became mine to protect. That's how my world works. Debts are sacred. Loyalty is everything. And I don't let people who belong to me walk into danger alone." "I don't belong to you," Amara whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. His eyes burned into hers. "Not yet." The next morning, Amara woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the smell of coffee drifting from somewhere in the penthouse. For a disoriented moment, she forgot where she was, forgot the events of the previous night, forgot that her entire life had been upended by a single impulsive decision to switch a glass of poisoned scotch. Then reality crashed back, and she sat up, heart pounding, wondering if she could just walk out the front door or if Min-ho's guards would stop her before she made it to the elevator. She found him in the kitchen, dressed in dark slacks and a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, making breakfast like this was normal, like he hadn't just confessed to being Seoul's most dangerous crime lord. He looked up when she entered, his eyes tracking her movement across the room with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "Good morning. Sleep well?" "No," Amara said honestly. "I kept waiting for someone to break down the door and finish what Tae-jun started." Min-ho's expression darkened. "That won't happen. Not here. This building is a fortress. 6 armed guards on rotation, cameras on every floor, biometric security on the elevators. Nobody gets in unless I allow it." He slid a plate across the counter toward her. "Eat." You barely touched dinner last night." She stared at the perfectly prepared eggs and toast, her stomach growling despite her anxiety. "You cook." His lips quirked in something that might have been a smile. "I have many skills, Amara Baptiste. Most of them involve violence and intimidation. But my mother insisted I learn to feed myself before she died. Said a man who can't cook is a man who's too dependent on others." She sat, picked up a fork, took a bite. It was delicious, seasoned perfectly, cooked with the same precision he seemed to apply to everything in his life. "Thank you. You're welcome." He poured her coffee, added cream without asking how she took it, and she realized with a start that he'd been paying attention last night when she'd fixed herself a cup before bed. He noticed everything, filed away every detail, probably knew more about her already than most people who'd known her for years. They ate in silence for a while, the tension between them electric and complicated. Finally, Amara set down her fork and met his eyes. "How long do I have to stay here? Until it's safe." That's not an answer. Min-ho leaned back against the counter, arms crossed, studying her. Taejun lost face last night. His assassination attempt failed in front of witnesses from 3 other families. That makes him look weak, incompetent. He'll retaliate, try to reclaim his reputation. And the easiest way to do that is to eliminate anyone connected to his failure. His eyes held hers. "You're connected, whether you want to be or not." Amara's hands trembled slightly. "So what am I supposed to do? Just hide here forever?" "No, just until I find the traitor in my organization and deal with him. Until I make it clear to Taejun that coming after you would be the last mistake he ever makes. And then you decide. You can go back to your life with enough money to start over somewhere new. Or," his voice dropped, becoming something dark and possessive, "you can stay. With me." Her breath caught. "Why would I do that?" "Because you feel it too. This thing between us. Don't pretend you don't." "I don't know what you're talking about," she lied, but her pulse was racing, her body betraying her with its response to his proximity, his intensity, the way he looked at her like she was something precious and dangerous all at once. Min-ho moved closer, not touching her, but close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, could smell his cologne, something expensive and masculine that made her head spin. "You saved my life, Amara. That means something in my world. It means you're under my protection. It means I will burn down this entire city before I let anyone hurt you. And it means," his eyes burned into hers, "that I'm going to spend every moment you're here proving to you that staying is the better choice." "That's insane," she whispered. "You don't even know me." "I know enough. I know you're observant and brave. I know you work 2 jobs to make ends meet because you send money home to your mother in the States every month. I know you came to Seoul 3 years ago to teach English, but the school that hired you went bankrupt, stranding you here with debt and no way home. I know you've been alone too long, struggling too hard, invisible to people who should see how extraordinary you are." His hand came up, fingers ghosting along her jaw, not quite touching. "And I know that the moment you walked into my line of sight last night, something in me recognized something in you. Like calls to like, Amara. Darkness to darkness." She should have pulled away, should have told him he was wrong, that she wasn't dark, wasn't anything like him. But the truth was, she'd spent 3 years in Seoul feeling like a ghost, working jobs that barely paid rent, sending every spare one to her mother who was drowning in medical bills back in Atlanta, surviving but not living. And last night, for the first time in longer than she could remember, she'd felt alive. Terrified, yes, but alive. Seen. Important. Like her choices mattered, like her actions had weight. Min-ho had done that. This dangerous, beautiful, terrifying man had looked at her and seen not just a waitress or a foreigner or another struggling expat, but someone worth saving, worth keeping. "I need air," she said, stepping back before she did something stupid like lean into his touch, like test whether his lips were as soft as they looked. "Can I go outside?" Min-ho's jaw tightened, clearly not liking the idea, but he nodded. "Youngwoo will accompany you, and you stay within a 3-block radius. Understood, I'm not a prisoner." No, his eyes held hers. "You're something far more valuable. You're mine to protect. There's a difference." An hour later, Amara stood on a busy street in Gangnam, Youngwoo a silent shadow 3 steps behind her, and tried to process the surreal turn her life had taken. The morning was crisp and cold, Seoul humming with its usual controlled chaos. She bought coffee from a street vendor, watched salarymen rush past in identical dark suits, listened to the melodic rise and fall of Korean conversations around her. This was her normal life, the world she'd been navigating alone for 3 years. Except now, she had a bodyguard. Now, she was tangled up with a mafia boss who looked at her like she was oxygen and he was drowning. Now, everything was different. She was so lost in thought that she almost didn't notice the man approaching until he was right in front of her, his smile friendly, his eyes calculating. "Excuse me," he said in accented English. "You dropped this." He held out her scarf, the one she'd been wearing that had somehow slipped from her bag. Amara reached for it automatically, but Youngwoo moved faster, stepping between them with a hand inside his jacket. The man's smile never wavered, but something cold flickered in his eyes. "Just trying to help." Youngwoo said nothing, just stood there radiating menace until the man backed away, disappearing into the crowd. Youngwoo turned to Amara, his expression grim. "We're going back." "Now, what? Why?" He didn't answer, just took her arm and guided her firmly but gently toward the waiting car. Within minutes, they were back in the penthouse, and Youngwoo was speaking rapid Korean into his phone, while Amara stood in the living room feeling confused and frightened. Min-ho appeared from his office, his expression thunderous. "Tell me exactly what happened." Youngwoo explained in Korean, his voice clipped and urgent. Min-ho's eyes cut to Amara. "That man who approached you, did he touch you?" "No, I mean, he tried to hand me my scarf, but Youngwoo stopped him." Min-ho's hands flexed like he wanted to wrap them around something, preferably the stranger's throat. "That wasn't your scarf. I'm wearing your scarf. You never dropped anything." Which means he was testing our security, seeing how close he could get to you before we reacted. Her blood went cold. Tae-jun, most likely. Or someone he hired. Either way, the message is clear. He knows where you are, knows you're with me, and he's letting us know that he can reach you whenever he wants. Fear spiked through her, sharp and immediate. "What do we do?" Min-ho moved to the windows, staring out at the city with eyes that promised violence. "We accelerate the timeline. I was going to give you a few days to adjust, to feel safe. But we don't have that luxury anymore." He turned, his gaze intense. "Pack a bag. We're leaving Seoul tonight. Where are we going? Somewhere Tae-jun can't reach you. Somewhere I can keep you safe while I clean up this mess." His voice dropped, becoming something darker, more possessive. "And somewhere I can have you all to myself, without distractions or threats, or the weight of this city pressing down on us." That evening, they drove out of Seoul in a convoy of 3 black SUVs, Min-ho beside her in the back seat, his hand resting possessively on her thigh like he needed the physical connection to assure himself she was still there, still safe. They traveled for hours, leaving the city lights behind, winding through mountain roads until they arrived at a sprawling estate nestled in the forest, all glass and stone and modern architecture that somehow blended seamlessly with the natural surroundings. "This is one of my safe houses," Min-ho explained as they entered, "completely off the grid. No one knows about it except Youngwoo and 2 other people I trust with my life. We'll stay here until I've dealt with the threat." The house was beautiful, all clean lines and expensive furniture and windows that overlooked a private lake. But Amara barely noticed the daycare because Min-ho was standing too close, his presence overwhelming in the intimate space, his eyes tracking her every movement like a predator watching prey. "You should rest," he said, his voice rough. "It's been a long day. You're not going to your room?" "No." He moved closer, backing her toward the wall without touching her, just using his presence to guide her until her shoulders hit the cool surface and he was there, caging her in with his arms on either side of her head. "I'm going to stay right here and make sure nothing happens to you." "Min-ho," she breathed, her heart pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "This is you're afraid of me," he murmured, his lips inches from hers. "Or you're afraid of yourself." Both, she admitted, because lying seemed pointless when he could probably read her like a book, could see the way her body responded to his nearness, the way her breath came faster, the way she couldn't stop staring at his mouth. "Good," he said. "Fear keeps you sharp, keeps you alive." But Amara, his hand came up, fingers tangling in her hair, tilting her face up to his. "Don't ever be afraid that I'll hurt you. I would burn the world before I let harm come to you." "That's not the kind of hurt I'm afraid of," she whispered. "I know." His thumb brushed over her lower lip and she shivered. "You're afraid I'll make you feel things you don't want to feel, make you want things you shouldn't want, make you mine in ways you can't take back." His eyes held hers. "And you're right to be afraid because that's exactly what I intend to do." He kissed her then, and it was nothing like she'd imagined. Not gentle or tentative or testing, but consuming, possessive, absolute. His mouth claimed hers with a hunger that stole her breath, his hand fisting in her hair to angle her head exactly how he wanted it, his body pressing against hers until she could feel every hard plane of muscle, every racing beat of his heart. She should have pushed him away, should have reminded him that she barely knew him, that this was too fast, too intense, too dangerous. But instead, she kissed him back with equal desperation, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer, drowning in the taste of him and the feel of him and the overwhelming rightness of being in his arms. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard, his forehead resting against hers, his hands gentle now, cradling her face like she was something infinitely precious. "I've wanted to do that since the moment I saw you in that kitchen," he confessed, his voice rough. "Wanted to taste you, touch you, claim you as mine." Amara's eyes fluttered open, meeting his. "This is crazy. I know, we barely know each other. I know." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "But that doesn't change what I feel. Doesn't change the fact that you're already under my skin, in my head, wrapped around my heart in ways I can't explain. I don't do this, Amara. I don't lose control. I don't let people get close. But you," he kissed her again, softer this time, worshipful, "you're different. You make me want things I gave up on years ago. Make me believe in things I thought were impossible." "What things?" she whispered against his lips. "Connection, trust." His eyes held hers. "Love." The word hung between them, too big and too soon and too terrifying to acknowledge. Amara's breath caught, her heart doing something complicated and painful in her chest. "You don't love me. You don't even know me." "Then let me," he said simply. "Let me know you. Let me prove that this thing between us is real. Let me show you that choosing me, choosing this, isn't the mistake you think it is. And if I can't, if I decide this is too much, too dangerous, too impossible, then I'll let you go." His jaw tightened like the words physically hurt him. "I won't like it. I'll probably spend the rest of my life regretting it. But I won't keep you prisoner, Amara. This only works if you choose it. Choose me." She stared at him, this beautiful, dangerous, impossible man who turned her world upside down in less than 24 hours and made a decision that terrified her. "Okay." His eyes flared. "Okay? Okay, I'll stay. I'll give this a chance. Give you a chance." She took a shaky breath. "But Min-ho, if you hurt me, if you betray me, if you turn out to be just another man who sees me as something to own instead of someone to cherish, I will walk away and never look back. Understood?" A slow smile spread across his face, transforming him from dangerous to devastating. "Understood. And Amara, yes, I'm going to make sure you never want to walk away. I'm going to make you so happy, so satisfied, so completely mine that the thought of leaving will be impossible." That's a bold claim. He kissed her again, slow and deep and full of dark promise. "Watch me prove it." The next few days blurred together in a haze of long conversations and stolen touches and moments of connection that terrified Amara with their intensity. Min-ho was attentive without being suffocating, protective without being controlling, giving her space when she needed it but always there when she reached for him. They talked about everything, their childhoods, their dreams, their fears, the paths that had led them to that restaurant on that specific night. She learned that he'd inherited his empire from his father at 23 after a rival gang murdered his entire family, leaving him alone with blood on his hands and a burning need for vengeance. Learned that he'd spent the last 7 years building his power, eliminating threats, creating a kingdom where he controlled everything because control meant safety, meant never being vulnerable again. "And you've never let anyone close?" she asked one night as they sat by the lake, the stars reflected in the still water. "Never trusted anyone enough to show them who you really are?" Min-ho was quiet for a long moment. Once he said finally, "Her name was Jae-sun. We were engaged." His jaw tightened. "She was supposed to be my wife, my partner, the one person in my world I could trust completely." Amara's heart clenched. "What happened?" "She betrayed me. Sold information about my operations to a rival gang. Nearly got me killed." His eyes were distant, haunted. "I found out 2 days before the wedding. Confronted her. She didn't even deny it, just laughed and said I was a fool for thinking someone could actually love a monster like me." "Oh, Min-ho," Amara breathed, her hand finding his. "I'm so sorry, don't be." He turned to her, his expression fierce. "She was right, I'm a monster. I've done terrible things, hurt people, destroyed lives. But with you," his hand cupped her face, "I want to be better. Want to be the man you see when you look at me instead of the man I actually am." "You're not a monster," she said firmly. "You're a man who's been hurt and who's done what he had to do to survive. There's a difference, is there?" She kissed him softly. Yes, and I'm going to spend however long this lasts proving it to you. The following morning, Amara woke alone in the massive bed, sunlight streaming through the windows, and the scent of coffee drifting from somewhere downstairs. She stretched, her body still humming with awareness from the night before when Min-ho had kissed her until her knees went weak, then pulled away with visible restraint, murmuring that he wanted to do this right, wanted to earn her trust before taking anything more. The memory made her stomach flutter with a mixture of frustration and something dangerously close to affection. No man had ever shown her that kind of restraint, that kind of care. Most men took what they wanted without asking. Min-ho was different. Dangerous, yes. Possessive, absolutely. But also protective in ways that made her feel cherished instead of owned. She found him on the deck overlooking the lake, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Korean in a tone that made her stop in the doorway. This was the other Min-ho, the crime lord, the man who commanded an empire built on fear and violence. His voice was cold, clipped, promising consequences that made her blood run cold even though she couldn't understand the words. He ended the call and turned, his expression softening the moment he saw her. Good morning. She stepped onto the deck, accepting the coffee he handed her. Everything okay? Define okay. He leaned against the railing, his eyes on the lake. I just authorized the elimination of my head of security, the man who's been with me for 5 years, who saved my life twice, who I trusted more than anyone except Youngwoo. Amara's stomach dropped. He was the traitor. Yes, Youngwoo found evidence this morning. Bank transfers from Taejun's organization, emails detailing my schedule, even recordings of private conversations. He'd been selling me out for months. The bitterness in Min-ho's voice was palpable, and I never suspected, never saw it coming. I'm sorry, she said softly, moving to stand beside him. I know how much trust means in your world. He turned to her, his eyes dark with something that might have been pain. Do you? Because every time I let someone close, every time I trust someone with a piece of myself, they prove that faith was misplaced. His hand came up, fingers trailing along her jaw. Except you. You saved my life when you had nothing to gain and everything to lose. That kind of selflessness, it's rare, precious, terrifying. Why terrifying? She whispered. Because it makes me want to believe in things I know better than to believe in. Makes me hope that maybe, just maybe, you're different. That you won't look at me one day and see a monster worth betraying. Min-ho, I would never. You don't know that, he interrupted gently. You barely know me, Amara. The real me. The man who's ordered executions and destroyed lives and built an empire on blood and fear. Right now, you see the version of me I show you. The man who cooks breakfast and kisses you gently and promises to keep you safe. But there's a darkness in me, a capacity for violence that would horrify you if you truly understood it. She turned to face him fully, her hands coming up to frame his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. Then show me. Show me the darkness. Show me all of it, because I'm not some fragile flower who needs to be protected from the truth. I've seen enough of this world to know that good and evil aren't as simple as people pretend. And I'd rather know exactly who you are than fall for a lie. His breath caught, his eyes searching hers like he was looking for any sign of deception, any hint that she was just saying what he wanted to hear. Finally, he spoke, his voice rough. You might regret that request. Maybe, she said, but at least it'll be an informed choice. At least I'll know what I'm choosing when I decide whether to stay or go. The tension between them was electric, charged with challenge and desire and something deeper, something neither of them was quite ready to name. Min-ho's phone rang, shattering the moment. He glanced at the screen, his expression hardening. Youngwoo. He answered in Korean, his voice going cold and commanding. Amara watched as his entire demeanor shifted, watched him transform from the man who'd held her so gently into someone capable of calculated violence. When he ended the call, his eyes met hers with grim determination. Taejun made his move. He hit 3 of my operations simultaneously this morning. Gambling house in Gangnam, protection racket in Hongdae, shipping container full of merchandise at the port. He's trying to draw me out, make me react emotionally instead of strategically. Are you going back to Seoul? She asked, her heart sinking. Not yet. That's exactly what he wants, for me to rush back and walk into whatever trap he's set. Instead, I'm going to let him think he's winning while Youngwoo systematically dismantles his organization from the inside. Min-ho's smile was cold, predatory. By the time I return to Seoul, Taejun will have nothing left. No operations, no loyal men, no power base. Just fear and the knowledge that coming after me was the last mistake he'll ever make. The ruthlessness in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, Amara felt something else entirely. A dark thrill at seeing this side of him, this controlled violence, this absolute certainty in his own power. "What about me?" she asked quietly. "Do I just stay here and wait?" His eyes softened. "You stay here and stay safe. That's non-negotiable, Amara. I can't focus on destroying Taejun if I'm worried about you. Can't be strategic if all I can think about is whether you're in danger." She understood the logic, even resented it a little. Being protected meant being sidelined, kept apart from the reality of his world. But she also understood that this was how Min-ho showed love, through control and protection and the absolute certainty that nothing would harm what was his. And somewhere over the past few days, she'd become his. Maybe she'd been his from the moment she switched that glass, binding them together in ways neither could have predicted. The days that followed settled into a strange rhythm. Min-ho spent hours on the phone, coordinating attacks on Taejun's empire with the cold precision of a general waging war. Amara watched from a distance, learning the language of his world through observation and the occasional translation Jung-woo provided when Min-ho was occupied. She learned that loyalty in his organization was rewarded lavishly and betrayal was punished without mercy. Learned that Min-ho commanded respect not just through fear, but through fairness, taking care of his people's families, funding education for their children, ensuring that those who served him well lived comfortable lives. He was a criminal, yes, but he operated by a code, a set of rules that made sense in his world even if they'd horrify the outside world. One evening, she found him in his office, staring at security footage on multiple monitors, his expression drawn with exhaustion. "You need to sleep," she said from the doorway. He looked up, his eyes tracking over her in the silk robe she'd borrowed from the guest room closet, and something hot and hungry flared in his gaze. "I need a lot of things," he said, his voice rough. "Sleep isn't at the top of the list." "What is?" she asked, moving into the room, drawn by the tension radiating from him. "You." His answer was simple, devastating. "I need you, Amara. Need to touch you, taste you, prove to myself that you're real and here and safe. Need to lose myself in you for a few hours and forget about everything else." Her breath caught at the raw need in his voice, the vulnerability he rarely showed. She moved to stand between his legs as he sat in his chair, her hands coming up to cradle his face. "Then take what you need." His hands gripped her hips, his eyes searching hers. "I'm trying to be patient. Trying to give you time to be sure about this, about us. But God, Amara, you're making it impossible." "I am sure," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I've been sure since you kissed me by the lake. Since you showed me who you really are and trusted me not to run. I'm not going anywhere, Min-ho. I'm choosing this. Choosing you." Something broke in him then, the careful control he'd been maintaining shattering like glass. He stood, lifting her easily, her legs wrapping around his waist as he carried her from the office toward his bedroom. His mouth found hers in a kiss that was pure desperation, pure need, years of loneliness and isolation, and carefully maintained distance burning away in the heat between them. He laid her on his bed with a gentleness that contradicted the hunger in his eyes, his hands trembling slightly as they traced the curves of her body through the thin silk. "You're beautiful," he breathed, his voice reverent. "So damn beautiful. And you're mine. Say it, Amara. Tell me you're mine." "I'm yours," she whispered, and meant it. Meant it with every fiber of her being, even though it terrified her, even though she knew loving this man would change her in ways she couldn't predict. His control shattered completely then. He kissed her like a man drowning, his hands learning every curve, every sensitive spot, drawing sounds from her throat she'd never made before. When he finally joined their bodies, moving inside her with a desperation that bordered on violence tempered by a tenderness that made her cry, Amara felt something shift in her chest, something fundamental and permanent. She'd given herself to men before, but this was different. This was surrender and claiming all at once, two broken people finding wholeness in each other. Afterwards, they lay tangled together, sweat cooling on their skin, hearts gradually slowing to normal rhythms. Min-ho's fingers traced patterns on her bare shoulder, his expression unreadable in the dim light. I love you, he said quietly, like the words were being pulled from somewhere deep inside him. I know it's too soon. I know it's impossible. But I need you to know. Need you to hear it at least once, even if you can't say it back. Amara turned in his arms, her hand coming up to rest over his heart, feeling the strong, steady beat beneath her palm. I love you too, she admitted, the words both liberation and prison. And you're right, it is impossible. We barely know each other. This is crazy and dangerous and probably the worst decision I've ever made. His arms tightened around her. But I can't help it, she finished. Can't help falling for you even though I know I shouldn't. Can't help wanting this even though it terrifies me. You make me feel things I've never felt before, Min-ho. Make me believe in things I thought were fairy tales. And maybe it won't last. Maybe this will end badly and we'll both regret it. But right now, in this moment, I'm choosing to believe, choosing to hope, choosing you. He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promises neither of them could guarantee they'd keep. They made love again, slower this time, learning each other's bodies with the care of cartographers mapping new territory. And when Amara finally fell asleep in his arms, she felt safe in a way she hadn't felt in years. Protected, cherished, home. The call came at 3 a.m, Youngwoo's voice urgent through Min-ho's phone. Amara woke to find him already out of bed, pulling on clothes with efficient speed, his expression grim. What's wrong? She asked, sitting up, the sheet clutched to her chest. Taejun escalated. He grabbed one of my suppliers, a man with a wife and 3 kids. Sent me a video of what he's planning to do to him unless I meet face to face within 12 hours. Min-ho's voice was cold, deadly. He's trying to force my hand, make me come to him on his terms. Are you going? Yes. His eyes met hers. I have to. That man is innocent, only guilty of working for me. I won't let him die because of this war. But it's a trap. Of course it's a trap. Min-ho finished dressing, strapping on a shoulder holster with practiced ease. But I'm walking in with eyes open and Youngwoo covering my back. We've been planning for this, waiting for Taejun to overextend himself. This is the opening we need. You could die, Amara said, fear closing around her heart like a fist. Min-ho came to the bed, sitting on the edge, his hand cupping her face with infinite gentleness. I could. This is my world, Amara. This is what it means to love me. Danger and violence and the very real possibility that one day I won't come back. His thumb brushed away the tear sliding down her cheek. Are you sure this is what you want? Sure you can handle it? She wanted to scream no, wanted to beg him to stay, to choose her over his empire, over his code of honor that demanded he protect his people even at risk to himself. But she understood now. This was who Min-ho was at his core. A leader who took responsibility seriously, who protected those under his care, who lived by a code even if that code existed outside the law. And loving him meant accepting all of it, the beauty and the darkness, the gentleness and the violence. Come back to me, she said, her voice breaking. Promise me you'll come back. I promise, he said, and kissed her like it might be the last time. I will always come back to you. Always. He left before dawn, and Amara spent the day in a state of controlled panic, packing the house, unable to eat or focus or think about anything except the fact that the man she loved was walking into a trap that could end his life. Youngwoo had left 2 guards with her, silent men who watched the perimeter with the same cold efficiency Min-ho's people always displayed. She wanted to hate them for letting him go, for not stopping him, but she understood. In Min-ho's world, honor mattered more than safety. Loyalty mattered more than life. The hours crawled by with agonizing slowness. Afternoon faded to evening. Evening darkened to night. Still no word. Amara sat by the windows overlooking the lake, phone clutched in her hand, willing it to ring, willing Min-ho's voice to come through the speaker telling her he was safe. He was coming home. Everything was okay. At midnight. Headlights cut through the darkness, vehicles pulling up to the house. Amara's heart leapt, then plummeted when she saw Youngwoo's grim expression as he entered. Where is he? She demanded, rushing forward. Where's Min-ho? He's alive, Youngwoo said quickly, holding up his hands. But he's hurt. Taejun had more men than we anticipated. There was a firefight. Min-ho took a bullet to the shoulder before we could extract him. Where is he now? In the car. He refused medical attention until he saw you, made sure you were safe. Youngwoo's expression softened slightly. He's been asking for you since we pulled him out. Amara ran outside, her bare feet slapping against cold stone, not caring about anything except getting to him. She found Min-ho in the back of the SUV, his shirt soaked with blood, his face pale but his eyes clear and focused. When he saw her, something in his expression eased. "You're okay. That's all that matters." "You're the one who got shot," she said, tears streaming down her face as she climbed into the car beside him. "Don't you dare tell me I'm what matters when you're bleeding." Min-ho's hand came up to cup her face, his touch gentle despite the pain etched in every line of his body. "I'm fine. It's just a graze." "You're covered in blood," Amara choked out, her hands hovering over his shoulder, afraid to touch him, afraid to hurt him. "That's not all mine," he said, his voice rough. Taejun's men didn't fare as well. His eyes held hers with fierce intensity. "It's over, Amara. Taejun is dead. He came at me himself when the shooting started, thought he could end this personally. But he underestimated how much I had to live for, how much I had waiting at home." Youngwoo appeared at the car door, medical supplies in hand. "Boss, we need to get that treated before infection sets in." Min-ho nodded, but his eyes never left Amara's face. "Help me inside." She supported him as they walked to the house, his weight heavy against her side, his blood soaking into her clothes. In the living room, Youngwoo efficiently cut away Min-ho's ruined shirt, revealing the bullet wound high on his shoulder, angry and seeping but mercifully not as deep as she'd feared. "The bullet went straight through," Youngwoo explained as he cleaned the wound with steady hands. "No major arteries hit. He'll need stitches and antibiotics, but he'll heal." Amara watched, her stomach churning as Youngwoo worked, as Min-ho sat stone-faced and silent through the pain, his jaw clenched, his free hand gripping the armrest hard enough to turn his knuckles white. She wanted to look away, couldn't bear to see him hurting. But she forced herself to stay present, to witness this reality of his world, the violence and blood and pain that came with loving a man like him. When Youngwoo finished the final stitch, Min-ho finally let out a breath. "Thank you." "Get some rest," Youngwoo said, packing up his supplies. "I'll have men on the perimeter all night. No one's getting near this place." He looked at Amara. "Take care of him. He's too stubborn to take care of himself." After Youngwoo left, Amara helped Min-ho to his bedroom, her hands gentle as she eased him onto the bed. "You need to rest." In a minute, he said, catching her hand, pulling her down to sit beside him. "First, I need to know you're okay. That seeing me like this, seeing what my world really looks like, hasn't changed things between us." "Min-ho, you almost died tonight," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You walked into a trap and almost didn't come back. How am I supposed to be okay with that?" "You're not," he said simply. "You're supposed to be terrified and furious and questioning every choice that brought you to this moment." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "And then you're supposed to decide if loving me is worth the fear, if I'm worth the risk." The tears came then, hot and unstoppable, 3 days of tension and fear and desperate hope pouring out all at once. "I watched the clock," she sobbed. "Watched every minute pass and wondered if you were already dead. Wondered if I'd never see you again, never get to tell you all the things I should have said this morning. Never get to touch you or kiss you or wake up beside you. And I realized something terrifying." She looked up at him through her tears. "I can't lose you. I've only known you a week, but the thought of a world without you in it is unbearable. So yes, you're worth the risk, worth the fear, worth everything." Min-ho pulled her against him despite the pain it must have caused, his good arm wrapping around her, holding her close. "I'm sorry," he murmured into her hair. "Sorry for putting you through that. Sorry for being the kind of man whose world is built on violence. Sorry that loving me means living with fear. But I'm not sorry for loving you. Not sorry for claiming you as mine. Not sorry for fighting my way back to you tonight when every instinct screamed to just give up, let the darkness take me. You're the reason I fought, Amara. The reason I'll always fight." They held each other as the adrenaline faded and exhaustion took its place, two people clinging to each other in the aftermath of violence, finding comfort in the simple fact of survival. The next morning, Amara woke to find Min-ho already awake, propped against the headboard, his shoulder bandaged but his color better, some of the pallor faded from his face. "You should be sleeping," she scolded gently. "Can't," he said, his eyes tracking over her face like he was memorizing every detail. "Too busy watching you. Making sure you're real and this isn't some morphine-induced dream." She sat up, her hand finding his, their fingers intertwining. "What happens now?" Now his voice was thoughtful. "We rebuild." Taejun's death created a power vacuum. Several smaller organizations will try to fill it, test my boundaries, see if I'm weak. I'll need to return to Seoul, make it clear that I'm still in control. Consolidate power before anyone gets ambitious ideas. When, she asked, dreading the answer. Soon. A few days to heal enough to travel, a week at most. His eyes held hers. Come with me, what? Come back to Seoul with me. Not as my hidden secret, not as someone I protect from the shadows, but as my partner, my woman. Let the whole city know that you're mine and I'm yours. Min-ho, that's dangerous. Making you a target. Very dangerous, he agreed. Every enemy I have will see you as a weakness to exploit. Every rival will consider taking you to get to me. You'll need guards everywhere you go. Bulletproof cars, security systems. Your life will never be completely private or normal again. Then why would you ask me to do it? She demanded. Why put me in that position? Because hiding you feels like shame, he said simply, like I'm embarrassed of what we have. And I'm not, Amara. I'm proud. Proud that you chose me, that you see past the monster everyone else sees to the man underneath. Proud that you're brave enough to love me despite everything. And I want the world to know it. Want every person in Seoul to understand that you're under my protection, that harming you means death, that you're the most important thing in my empire. His hand cupped her face. But only if you're willing, only if you choose it. I won't force you into my world more than I already have. She should have said no, should have chosen safety over love, anonymity over danger, should have walked away while she still could before she was in too deep to surface. But the truth was she was already in too deep, already drowning in him and not wanting to be saved. Give me time to think about it, she said finally. This is a big decision. Min-ho nodded, though she could see the disappointment flicker in his eyes. Take all the time you need. Just know that whatever you decide, I'll respect it. If you want to stay hidden, I'll keep you safe in the shadows. If you want to leave entirely, start over somewhere far from Seoul and my world, I'll make sure you have everything you need. His voice dropped. But if you choose to stand beside me, Amara, I promise you'll never regret it. I'll spend every day proving you made the right choice. Over the next few days, as Min-ho healed and preparations were made for their return to Seoul, Amara wrestled with the decision. Youngwoo provided her with files, information about what being publicly associated with Min-ho would mean. The threats, the scrutiny, the complete loss of privacy. But also the power, the protection, the ability to move through Seoul's elite circles as an equal instead of a ghost. She read stories about the women who'd loved men like Min-ho before, some who'd thrived in the darkness, others who'd been destroyed by it. She tried to imagine her future both ways, hidden and safe, but forever separate from the man she loved, or exposed and vulnerable but truly his partner in every sense. The decision crystallized one evening when she found Min-ho in his office, arguing in rapid Korean with someone on the phone. She understood enough now to catch the gist. Someone was questioning his judgment, suggesting that his recent actions, his obsession with protecting one woman, showed weakness. Min-ho's voice went cold, deadly. My personal life is not your concern. What should concern you is whether you want to continue working for me or whether you'd prefer to find employment elsewhere. Permanently. There was a pause, then he continued. Amara Baptiste is under my protection. Anyone who touches her, threatens her, or even looks at her the wrong way will answer to me personally. Spread the word. This is not negotiable. He ended the call and turned to find her standing in the doorway. How much did you hear? Enough, she said, moving into the room. Enough to know that keeping me hidden isn't really an option anymore, is it? Your people already know about me, already see me as a weakness. He stood, his expression guarded. Yes. Then there's only one way to turn that weakness into strength, she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Make it public. Make it official. Make it clear that I'm not just someone you're protecting out of obligation, but someone you've chosen. Someone who chooses you back. His eyes flared with something hot and possessive. You're sure? No, she admitted. I'm terrified. But I'm also in love with you, and hiding that feels wrong. Feels like I'm ashamed when I'm not. You're the most extraordinary man I've ever met, Min-ho. Dangerous, yes. Violent, absolutely. But also protective and loyal and capable of tenderness that takes my breath away. And I want the world to know that I see all of you and I choose all of you. Every beautiful, terrible, impossible piece. He crossed to her in 3 strides, his mouth claiming hers in a kiss that was pure possession, pure gratitude, pure love. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against hers. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not," she agreed with a small smile. "But you're stuck with me anyway." They returned to Seoul a week later. Min-ho's shoulder healed enough to move without obvious pain. His empire stabilized after Taejun's death. The penthouse felt different now. Not like a prison, but like a home. Amara's belongings were moved from the guest room to Min-ho's bedroom, her clothes hanging beside his in the massive closet, her toiletries on the bathroom counter, physical evidence that she belonged here, belonged to him. Min-ho wasted no time making their relationship public. He took her to dinner at the most exclusive restaurant in Gangnam, his hand possessive on her lower back as they entered, his eyes daring anyone to comment on the beautiful black woman at his side. He introduced her to his business associates, his voice firm and proud. "This is Amara Baptiste. My woman. She's under my protection. Treat her with the same respect you show me." The reactions ranged from surprise to scandalized to calculating, but no one dared comment negatively. Not when Min-ho's hand rested on his gun and his eyes promised violence to anyone who disrespected what was his. Amara held her head high, channeling every ounce of confidence she possessed, refusing to let anyone see her fear. This was her choice, her decision, and she would own it completely. Later that night, back in the penthouse, Min-ho pulled her into his arms, his mouth finding hers with desperate hunger. "You were magnificent tonight," he murmured against her lips. "So brave, so beautiful, so utterly mine." "Yours," she agreed, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. "Always yours." They made love with the city lights glittering around them, Seoul spread out below like a kingdom Min-ho ruled and Amara now shared. His touch was reverent and possessive all at once, claiming every inch of her, marking her as his in ways that went far beyond the physical. When they finally collapsed together, sated and breathless, Min-ho's arms wrapped around her like he was afraid she might disappear if he let go. "I love you," he whispered into her hair. "More than I thought I was capable of loving. More than I knew I needed." Amara turned in his arms, her hand coming up to rest over his heart. "I love you too. And I'm not going anywhere. I'm choosing this life. Choosing you. Every dangerous, beautiful, impossible day." The next few weeks settled into a new rhythm. Amara accompanied Min-ho to meetings, learning the intricacies of his empire, the delicate balance of power and fear that kept everything running. She met the families of his men, the wives and children who depended on his protection and generosity. She saw the other side of his world, not just the violence and danger, but the community he'd built, the people he cared for, the code of honor that governed everything he did. And slowly, she began to understand. Min-ho wasn't just a criminal. He was a leader, someone who took responsibility for hundreds of lives, who made impossible decisions every day, who carried the weight of his empire on his shoulders and never complained. She also made changes of her own. With Min-ho's encouragement and financial support, she enrolled in university to finish the degree she'd abandoned when she came to Seoul. Started teaching English part-time to children in the neighborhood, finding purpose beyond just surviving. Min-ho attended her first parent-teacher conference, his imposing presence making the other parents give them a wide berth, but his eyes soft and proud as he watched her interact with the kids. "You're good at this," he said afterwards. "Good at connecting with people, making them feel safe. It's a gift." She leaned into him as they walked to the car. "I learned from the best. You make me feel safe, Min-ho. Even in the middle of chaos and danger, when I'm with you, I feel like nothing can touch me." "That's because nothing can," he said, his arm tightening around her waist. "I would burn this entire city to ash before I let anyone harm you." The certainty in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, it made her feel cherished, protected, loved in ways she'd never experienced before. This was what it meant to be loved by Kang Min-ho. Absolute devotion, absolute protection, absolute possession. And she was learning to love him the same way, with the same intensity, the same unwavering loyalty. But their peace was shattered 3 months later when Amara started receiving threats. First, anonymous messages on her phone, vague warnings about the company she kept, the choices she was making. Then, more direct threats. Pictures of her taken from a distance, walking to class, shopping for groceries, always accompanied by messages promising violence. Min-ho's reaction was immediate and terrifying. He doubled her security, assigned Young-woo personally to her detail, and began systematically hunting down anyone who might be responsible. But the threats continued, escalating, growing bolder. Someone out there wasn't afraid of Min-ho's reputation, wasn't deterred by his promises of retribution. Someone wanted Amara dead and was willing to risk everything to make it happen. It came to a head on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Amara was leaving the university, Youngwoo a few steps behind, when a van screeched to a stop beside her. Men poured out, faces covered, guns drawn. Youngwoo reacted instantly, his weapon clearing his holster, his body putting itself between Amara and the threat. Gunfire erupted, students screaming and scattering, chaos exploding across the peaceful campus. Youngwoo took down 2 men before a bullet caught him in the leg, dropping him to his knees. Amara screamed his name, tried to go to him, but rough hands grabbed her from behind, dragging her toward the van. She fought, kicked, clawed, everything Min-ho had taught her about self-defense flooding back. But there were too many of them, and they were professionals, subduing her with brutal efficiency. The last thing she heard before something struck the back of her head was Youngwoo shouting into his phone, his voice desperate. "They've got her. Boss, they've got Amara." Then darkness swallowed everything, and she knew nothing more.